All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Salesforce Simplified webinar. We are going to talk about the new frontier of prompt engineering, Salesforce Copilot, and not all things, but all things AI, because that's a huge topic that we could potentially try to cover. Real quick, and then we'll do some introductions. I want to thank everybody for their time this morning or this afternoon, or wherever you're joining from. I really appreciate you giving us a watch, and hopefully you learned something. That'd be great. This is the agenda for today. We're going to be doing intros in a minute. We're going to talk about just a little bit of background. What's generative AI, LLMs, what's prompt engineering, what's an actual prompt. Then we'll get into some Salesforce specific content. Let's take a look at Copilot, Prompt Studio, and more. This is going to be kind of like a wet your beak. I mean, we're not going to, each one of these bullets could be a whole separate webinar, but it should be enough to kind of spawn some interest, maybe answer some questions and show you what Salesforce is doing around these technologies. Without further ado, my name is Derek Cassis. I'm the VP of Modern Apps here at XenTegra, heading up the Salesforce practice. Left Salesforce last year to do this. And my only ask of any of you all watching this, either live or recorded, is that you think of XenTegra Modern Apps when you need or have any Salesforce questions, concerns, work, you need help, you're looking for an admin. Let us be there and give us a shot at helping you guys. That's kind of what we're doing. We're getting out there and trying to help customers as best we can. With me, I'll turn it over to Josiah to introduce himself.
Yeah, so I'm Josiah. I'm the director of sales on our XenTegra's nonprofit side called Computers for Community. We offer all of our IT services to the nonprofit world at a highly reduced rate. So that's been my kind of passionate thing I've been working on for the last couple of years here. Really just trying to get more of the nonprofits involved and get them through this digital transformation that's kind of hitting all of us right now. So super excited about everything AI. I think we're all just kind of starting to dip our toes in and see what's possible.
Yeah,
for the conversation.
good deal. All right, and so that picture of the Salesforce Tower in San Francisco I took when I was there working, I think about 2 years ago. And if you've never been into the tower, this is what it looks like all the way at the top. That's Alcatraz. Around the top, you've got views of San Francisco. It's pretty amazing. And then the bottom right, Dreamforce, which brings me to another topic. If you're interested in Dreamforce, reach out, let us know. We can potentially help with some costs there. We're bringing a large group. It's always better to roll with a large group at an event like that. It's so huge. So, yeah. All right. Without further ado, let's get to the actual reason you're here. And this may be, you may know this, you may not, but I figured it was a good place to start, right? What is generative AI and LLMs? Now, I will put in a caveat on this. I learn every day, which is why I love what I do. And so I'm learning this every day as we go on. So I may or may not be able to answer questions. I'll do the best I can. You may disagree with something I'm saying, and if you do, put it in the chat. Let's have a conversation. Like, that's the whole point of this, right? I'm just here to try to answer, the questions and fill the gaps. So the way that I like to explain it is generative AI is, so what I have there is what I got from Googling. But what I like to say is generative AI is basically the AI models we've had, but they're able to actually communicate in a very person-like manner, right? You're having a conversation instead of like dealing with a chat bot. The definition is it refers to deep learning models that can generate high quality text, images, and other content. The most well-known one, obviously, ChatGPT. There's a whole bunch of other ones. Josiah, I'm sure you've used one of these before, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they're changing rapidly with each new revision that launches. Like you can just tell it's trained on a new data set. It's running a whole new model.
Yeah,
So
and it's interesting because this technology had been around for a while, but it was the interface that was missing, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like now we've got these interfaces that allow much easier access to this type uh, of AI. And generative AI is actually reaching back into what's known as a large language model or an LLM. And this is important when we get to some of the things that Salesforce is doing. And it's defined as a large deep learning, which is a area of AI, the model that's pre-trained on huge amounts of data, right? It's just continuously trained on data, which is supervised training, if you want to get into that. But the underlying transformer here it says is a neural network. Now we're not going to go much any further than that.
But
I put a definition of what a neural network is, but it kind of represents the complexity of a brain, if you will, where it's just got a whole bunch of nodes and they're all kind of working together to understand what's being sent in from a training data perspective, right? So you got your neural network that's basically it's what the LLM is built upon, and then you've got generative AI, which reaches into the LLM to bring back a response. And the concept is you're typically asking it a question and then you're getting a response. You want to add anything, Josiah? Good stuff.
I mean, we could talk on this one till midnight, just to what is a neural net, how does this
Oh
work, and where
God. Yeah.
I think one of the most fascinating pieces of this is the way they've started learning about the human brain through development of these large neural nets. Like it's
Yeah.
it's going backwards. Like you'd think we're modeling the human brain, but now that we've almost built it, we're learning how does the brain work.
Yeah.
It's so deep. It's cool.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting area of research and whatnot that's going on there. That leads us to the next area that we want to talk about. And I pause there for a minute because if you do any Googling, you're going to see make $1 million as a prompt engineer. Prompt engineering for you. 101 prompt engineering. Become a prompt engineer. It's like the latest and greatest thing in the world. And there are some people getting handsomely paid for this, which I still am having it doesn't really it's weird for me, but let's get into this, right? What is prompt engineering? What's a prompt? And so the process of creating prompts, this sounds ridiculous, but that's what it is, that return useful responses from an LLM, right? So a prompt engineer is somebody that creates, and I'm probably oversimplifying this, but creates very meaningful prompts. Now I'm going to say a prompt is almost a question, right? And so you may say, well, what's a prompt? Okay, well, prompt is the question you send the LLM. And so the more clearer and descriptive the prompt is, the better the response. And so like from in a business circumstance, right, you want to be developing things on your data that is potentially being used in this type of an AI LLM scenario where you're getting back useful data, not just random artifacts. Uh, and you want to include any important pieces of information that can be used as it's kind of creating its response. Um, it's kind of important, and I'm going to give a demo on this in a minute, but it's almost like, hey, I want you to go do some research. Here's a stack of papers related to what I want you to research. Read them first and then finish it up and write a paper for me, right? You got to have some input and then the output is the response. Now, Salesforce is allowing prompts to be dynamic. This is the magic sauce here with your CRM data. What I mean by dynamic is that we can now input, like if I wanted to research, hey, research Amazon and let me know, what their stock is as an example. Well, Amazon could be account name. So research, insert account name, blah, 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 right? And so you can actually start using your data in what's sent to the LLM to get really meaningful, actionable responses. Okay. And before I get to Prompt Studio, I want to demonstrate the concept of what we're talking about here. So ChatGPT, generative AI. So let's do this. Tell me about the car. Right. And so this may be not this. So that's a pretty
Question.
bad prompt, right? That's a prompt. Tell me about the car. All right. Well, what if I was asking that, but I'm looking at a car across the street. Tell me about the car, and I want that information. But the prompt is totally useless because it's tell me about the car. Okay, well, tell me about the red car. Right. Oops.
It's still generating. Lots to tell you about that car, Derek.
The trends, key features, yeah, types of cars. It's all just, this is right. Tell me about the red car. Right. Very generic. So again, this is prompt, but it's just bringing back somewhat useless like Google type stuff, right? Now, if I said, tell me about the 2024 Hyundai Fit, right? So now the prompt is actually feeding it a year, it's feeding it a brand, it's feeding it a type of a car. And now I'm actually getting some useful information back from the LLM, and it's giving it back in like a format of which I could basically cut and paste this and send it to somebody that was asking me for a report on what this car has. Right. And so you can see how the differences of what you're prompting these LLMs and these large language models is really important. Otherwise, you're just going to get back a whole bunch of generic information that's very useless. And that's kind of what we're talking about when it comes to prompting. Okay. So in Salesforce, we have a whole bunch of things going on with prompt. Remember, so if you come into, so I'm in a Salesforce org and I'm in setup, and I'm not going to talk about setting all this up. That's pretty easily accessible all over the web and on Salesforce. But if you come into the Einstein section and you look, there's a generative AI area. Okay. And that's where we're going to kind of play today. You see there's a bunch of stuff. There's Copilot, which we'll get to, feedback, setup, trust layer, which we'll get to, and prompt builder. Okay. So let's take a look at this for a second. So prompt builder is where it's exactly what I was talking about before, where they're allowing us to be dynamic with what we're asking it, right? So let me get back there. So what we're going to do, let me get into prompt builder again. Einstein, generative AI. All right. And they do a good job. There's a lot of information along the way. This isn't just like adding. It's a really significant addition, in my opinion, to the feature set of what Salesforce is doing. So there's a lot of kind of teaching and coaching involved. So you'll see that we've got all these prompts, right? And these prompts have been built with Prompt Builder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and let's look at introduce yourself. Okay, now this is the secret. This is where this all happens. And let me make this bigger. Okay. So this is Prompt Builder. This is the prompt, the preview, the response. What model am I using, right? OpenAI GPT 3.5 Turbo. Okay, the model type is a standard. So what I'm doing, look at what I'm feeding in. You're a sales executive, your name is, and then I'm putting in the sender name. From an org, I'm putting in, like all these inputs are what you're feeding in okay? Recipient, right? Instructions. Before you start writing the email, you must research about the company, right? And so this is where now the recipient, well, who is a recipient? Well, I can come in here and I could actually add a recipient. So if I search for something like, let's just grab somebody and a related record, solar panel, I can hit preview here. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to use this prompt. Now, let's take a look at this for a second. So unlocking potential, solar panel meeting request, right? And so I trust this message fine well. So you can see it's, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's taking this instruction set here in the prompt template. It's using this to actually generate this response, but it's actually injecting and using this record and this record as it's building this, right? So it's sending that information to this LLM and it's actually creating this response. Now, one of the disconnects that I had when I was looking at this was, all right, well, I don't understand. Like somebody's making these prompts, they know exactly how to ask the question. What about the regular user? Like, what if they ask something totally random? And then I realized what we're doing here is that we're creating these reusable prompts that we know will return useful business data so that said sales individual can easily click on that type of prompting and get information. What do I mean by that? So let me show you. So if I come over here in my environment, make sure I'm still logged in. Okay. So I'm going to simply just go to an account. Opening an account. Okay, now up here you'll see our little Einstein, right? So these are prompts, right? Show related opportunities, show opportunities, like summarize account, like these are behind the scenes, these are prompts. Now, that's a little call out to one of my favorite movies, War Games, if anybody's seen it. But I could actually summarize. So this prompt is now, while it's doing that, right? We'll come back to Prompt Studio. So you saw this is the introduce yourself one. Then there's a summarize, there is a summarize out there as well. Now, I came back here so you could see this, right? So, right, so what it did was it summarized that based on what we're doing, right? And so what I'm using here, this is Copilot leveraging the prompt, right? So all these things kind of work together. And it's interesting because, and I'm still getting that, I'm still understanding how these both work together and how prompting can be used separately and how Copilot can be used. And I'm not trying to blur the two, but I'm kind of showing you how some of this AI that's been embedded in here is important. But so the concept is that what I was getting at is that the prompts are like pre-created for the sales individuals, right? Another one. Let me go back and let's find. So I want to send an email. Let's close
Like
out.
one thing that you just demoed there, the generative AI and the prompts can be utilized internally or externally. And I think that's a big separation for a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of people considering how am I going to use this? Like the way you just used that there, like you're generating information for your own internal team to better consume the knowledge that's in your data. So, if you're not necessarily ready to start blasting marketing content out or reaching out to clients with generative content, it still can be extremely powerful just to internally ingest your own data at a more human
Yeah,
level. If that makes sense.
100%. Yep. And I gave a little sneak peek because that's Copilot.
Mm-hmm.
This here, right? Draft with Einstein. So now I'm in an email, right? And you see this draft with Einstein. So if I click on that, Einstein, okay, let's do a different one. So these are, let's do that one. Okay, let's do this. So draft an email with Einstein, right? So in your words, describe the email you want to write. Now, see, this is kind of like, okay, I'm creating a prompt here myself, but there are pre-made ones, right? Remember the introduce yourself that we just saw before the prompt, the introduce yourself one?
Hmm.
So if I click on that, now what do I want to relate this to? So if you like, if you're prospecting or if you're, trying to find information out, you can actually leverage the prompting with the related records. So I'm going to do the starter kit. Okay. So now what I just did was I said, so the recipient from what you saw before is Bonnie, right? And so we've got this, right? So in my recent exploration of Rosenberg products, I've identified potential synergies that align with XenTegra's expertise. Cool. I believe that there could be a valuable opportunity. I mean, so very quick, you can see how somebody could get very quick with that, right? And this is not just a template. It's being created with the information that's in the system. This is going to be when this gets sent, it'll have the actual date and time. But what if I was like, they don't really know us as Integra. So I could do it like this. Uh, Now I don't, so I'm revising this. So we'll see if it does the whole thing or if it just gets confused. Because all I said was replace the company name, right? Now look, same thing, but now it's replaced the company name with Acme.
So
Right. So
this is the multi-turn within the templates of prompt engineering.
yeah, so revise the draft, right? So I'm revising. Um, I could say make it longer, make it shorter, that type of stuff. But this is interacting with this prompting, right? So this is the introduce yourself prompt that we saw, which was here, right? But this is the prompt that created the output that you're seeing here. So Prompt Studio that Salesforce has done is they've created this declarative way for folks in this ecosystem to be in kind of a comfortable environment. This kind of feels like the typical flow builder, things like that. You can pull in, inputs very easily, and you can revise right here because you're seeing kind of what's being done, right? You're seeing the response that's coming back from the model. Now, what other models can we use, right? So let's go back. Let's look at what a new template looks like. So you've got a couple options. You can do field generation, which kind of helps. Like if you had a description field, for example, you could kind of help what you want in there for consistency reasons. Flex is kind of very flexible. Record summary, sales email makes sense, right? So let's just do sales email. We'll do demo. One also thing I want to mention, in a lot or almost all of these technologies, the description field in flows and in variables is really important because these tools are using those description fields to make decisions on whether or not that's a good action or not. For example, when we get to Copilot, it can understand intent and it's going to use the description fields. And so I know there's a lot of people out there that don't fill those out, but if you start filling those out, it will help you. And fill them out, I'll show you so that it's actually useful information and it'll help you when you start getting to some of this AI. I am going to do just this because I want to just show you
Did you
the
just tell us to always fill out the description and then skip right over it, Derek?
Yeah, I'm skipping over it because I just wanted to get here.
I know.
So you'll notice that like they've got a bunch of LLMs available. And it's interesting because as you build out prompts, these will return different results. Some may have more information, some may be long-winded, some may be shorter. So it gives you a lot of flexibility as you go through and you create your prompt. Now, there's a lot of tutorials out there on building a prompt and walking you through it. It's not really the type of thing like, and I'd be interested, if somebody on here is interested in doing a workshop on prompt building and prompt studio and stuff, we can certainly do that. What I'm trying to do is give you a little bit of an understanding on why this is a thing, what it's used for, and how it's surfaced. But going through the whole process right now, I just don't think we have enough time. So I recommend going to the trails, and we can also send you some information on that because it's a really powerful tool once you start leveraging it. Okay. All right. So let's cancel that. Those are the prompts. That's prompt builder. And the way it works too is that you add like these prompts and you kind of tell them what template types they are. And that's kind of how it knows where to show. Like a field would obviously show up next to the field. The email ones obviously show like, draft with Einstein, that type of stuff. Okay. So Copilot, you just saw a little bit of. Copilot, as Salesforce describes, is a conversational assistant for the world's #1 AI CRM powered by Einstein 1. So let's unpack that statement for a minute, right? So obviously, #1 AI, #1 CRM, we've known for, they just own the market, given. AI CRM now, okay? They're leading with AI, and they have been for the past 3 years. Powered by Einstein 1. What is Einstein 1? You did. Josiah, do you know what Einstein 1 is?
That's the renaming of their AI platform across the board.
Pardon me. It's a renaming of the Salesforce platform. So it's Einstein. So what used to be the Salesforce platform is now referred to as the Einstein 1 platform for the most part. It's a kind of a brand. Provides trusted generative responses that are grounded in your business, right? So the Copilot is also leveraging reaching into this generative response. Allows sales teams, service reps to have conversations to accomplish goals. I like it, right? It's the whole concept of work smarter, not harder. So let's go back to this, and I kind of gave you a glimpse of what this was looking like. So if I come back to this, I come here, right? You can see that this is Copilot. Summarize account, like these are all different things I can do or conversations I can have with this feature. Now, what does it look like here? So if we go up to Copilot Studio, we have Copilot. Okay. And so the way that this works is that you add actions to your Copilot, right? And so that assistant is always hanging out and it's always got certain capabilities. Now you'll notice that there's one here. It's high priority open cases for a given contact. So what I'm going to do is give you an example of that. Let's go back out here. Okay. So I am going to type, find me all the high priority cases for Bonnie Barra. Okay. So what it's got to do is it's got to understand what I'm asking. I did feed it in 2 things, right? I fed it in like a status and I fed it in a person. Now, look, it's basically saying, all right, well, I need to know which one you're working on, right? Okay, well, I want this one. And it says I couldn't find results. Given, okay. So let's try this again with see if this one works. Okay. Yeah, so it must have been because I pasted it in. Interesting. All right, so this is what I want to show you, right? So high priority cases for specified contact have been found. Now, one thing I'll also point out, these are all new features, right? Like a lot has been put into this platform. So nuances like what you just saw, which unless I'm not seeing it, this looks like the exact same
It's the
spelling.
same prompt.
So maybe it's because I
Result.
pasted it, who knows? But I got a different response. But it's also, I mean, it's not just pattern matching, right? It's not just, if it's this, go here. If it's this, go here. Because then you get the same response with the same text every time. But what's interesting here is that I've now got a case and I can click on the case number and then it immediately says, I can summarize the case. You can see how this could really start creating some really interesting workflows, right? And you could see why this would be, it looks like there's some issues with this one here in this demo work, but it looks like you could start creating a lot of that busy work where you got like multiple tabs open. I could see being replaced with a lot of the Copilot actions. So let's go. I'm going to do it twice and see. I don't know if I turn on summarize case or not. Yeah. All right. So let's go and see how that was built. So this is how you do that. So I'm going to open in Builder. So the way you work with Copilot is you work within Copilot Builder. Okay. And
So are all these actions for Copilot here, are these all going to be created by your own admin within your org, or are these being added as
so there
templates?
is a standard, just like standard objects and custom objects, there's standard actions and then custom actions.
Okay. And you expect the standard actions to be rapidly building out here over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I would think you'd see a bunch of that. Yep. Now, given like the custom ones are gonna be, very specific to what you're trying to do in your own org, but things like summarize record that apparently not working and using knowledge and other like generic like 80 percentile type things, I think you're gonna start seeing in there, in my opinion. Okay, so let's take a look at this, how this worked. So the type is a flow, and the flow is find high priority cases for a given contact. Okay, so let's open that flow. This is what I want to show. Okay, well, that's opening. So again, the action for this is a Copilot action, and the type of the action is calling a flow. Okay, it's got a flow action. And the flow that it's referring to is this one. Now you'll notice if I come in here and start looking at this action retrieves the contracts that match the provided input from the user, like description, important. Gets the high priority cases for the contact that are considered open. High priority is indicated by a value of high. You're putting this in there because this is used. This is a auto launched flow. It's used by Copilot. So it looks here to determine whether or not this is a good choice or not, right? So this is the flow that's executed by this action. Now, what does it do? Input, output, right? The input provides the contact name, right? So when I wrote Bonnie Barra, there's the input, okay? And then the output is the output of the flow. So if you're familiar with flows, we're going to go here, available for output, right? And so RC high priority cases, that output, right? RC high priority cases showing, and that's where you saw that square for the case. Okay. And then what you can do is you can actually test it right here. So as you're kind of building your actions, I think it's awesome that I can just do it here. And it's very similar to flow, right? You can test and debug flow right there. But what it's showing you is kind of what it's like. This is what it sent in. This was the search result in the flow, right? So I'm seeing, right, what's happened now. See missing user input, so it's got missing information, right? That's why this didn't work, which is interesting because if I do that, it should resubmit and now contact name, but that's the wrong person, right? And so now I can start figuring out why this is having issues. So this is Copilot Builder. This is how you would kind of build and create your Copilot. Now, a Copilot, if I come back over to the actions, I deactivate, and I come back here. And so if you deactivate your Copilot, it's not going to be happy.
You deactivated Copilot or that action? You deactivated Copilot.
Copilot.
Yep.
So one thing that I find interesting and odd, and again, these are new, but in order to add actions, you got to deactivate it. So, which is strange to me. And then the other thing is, I feel like this should say it's deactivated, or it should just disappear. That's just me, but I wanted to point this out because for those that are new to it, that could be kind of troublesome. It literally just means that it's not activated. The minute I activate this, I refresh this page. The guy is happy now, right? Okay. So Copilot, and you can make it bigger so you can interact with it more, because I think people would be, I know right now for a fact, like, for example, we like to know contacts at partners that we work with, and we track them. And it'd be great if somebody come in and be like, I've got 5 meetings this week. Can you tell me if there are any partner contacts in that area that I could sync up and have lunch with? Think about the power of being able to just type that and have it spit back, oh, these 3 guys are in the area. And then you could then use an email to send them an email, something like that. There's a lot of really interesting use cases to do things very quickly that would typically take a long time, which meant they wouldn't get done. How do you get this stuff? So I'm going to go to Salesforce Bend for that instead of recreating the same content, because it's out there all over the place. 4 ways to get Copilot and Einstein 1. Einstein 1 editions. I find this also interesting. So these prices are obviously as of July 2nd. And this article was written in March. So you probably want to check, and everybody's going to have different pricing, which is why I don't usually get into that on webinars, but you need to understand where and how you get it. Einstein 1 editions have access to that. There are add-ons, obviously, that give you these pieces. Development orgs to play with, free trials, right? There's a free trial that you can play with. Working with a partner like us, right? We've got the ability to get on with you and kind of go through these things and help you understand how they work and all that good stuff. Obviously, there's trails, and the trails have associated orgs with them that have this stuff turned on. So there's a bunch of various ways you can get your hands on these features. Am I doing on time? All right. So I don't want to run out of time on this right here. So Salesforce platform, Einstein 1. That's the way that I see it, right? It's a trusted AI platform for customers. They're really all about AI, but Salesforce knows that, like, there's got to be trust with this AI. And especially if we're harnessing our own CRM data in this, right? Which means I'm sending it my stuff into this LLM. Like, what are you doing with that? And how do I know that you're not taking that and doing something with it, right? And so this is kind of showing you the trust layer from the prompt all the way back out to the response, right? So you're doing data retrieval and it's grounding it. So grounding it is dynamically grounding it with your data, right? Those inputs fields you saw in the prompting, and then data masking. So let's go over here real quick. And if you see here you go back down to the Einstein section and generative and Einstein trust layer. So if this is on, I'm now pattern-based masking this information, right? So which means that, like, this stuff is not sent. It's masked. It's jarbled up and then unjarbled up, if that's a word, when it comes back. Name, email, phone, credit card, like all this stuff. It's really important I mean, this is really, really important. So not to gloss over this, but the trust layer concept is, let me go back. The trust, and that's the data map. It's extremely important because we've got to protect our data from these rando LLMs that are out there that are trying to basically just harness all the data it can get, because data, let's face it, that's the power right now. Like having the data is really important. 0-day retention. Here's the response. Here's the data demasking that I just talked about. I can't say that word. Toxicity detection, right? So is it coming back with something like offensive, things like that? Audit trail and feedback. This is really cool. Audit trail and feedback. This is what I feel like can really help these models become very, very, very fine-tuned. So what they're talking about there is, and I have a link to this article too, but the feedback. So as you get responses, you can thumb up, thumb down. The response like was wrong, you tell them, right? And so we're rating these things. There's another article that I linked to talking about how prompt engineering and this generative AI stuff that's basically indexing the internet right now is allowing us to surface and eliminate bias. And if you think about that for a second, one of the examples was, I know I'm not going to get into something that could be offensive, but if you were like, hey, write me a program to tell me, which stuffed animal I should throw out the window, Kermit the Frog or Snoopy, right? And it was like Snoopy. Well, then it's biased towards that, right? Like you don't want bias in any of this AI. It has no place for it. And so we're able to actually leverage feedback loops to try to kind of get that stuff out. And that's a much deeper conversation. But the point being is that this whole thing together is Salesforce saying that your data is their number one priority, in my opinion. It's a very solid solution right now, the way that they're doing this. So we're at 42. I don't think we have any questions, do we? No. Josiah, do you have anything to add on the trust layer?
I mean, the reality is a lot of the team members at a lot of organizations are individually getting excited and interested in large language models and how can this be used. And so at least, starting to have some conversations around putting policy in place, and potentially, starting to leverage tools like these that at least have the trust layer in place. Because, alternatively to this model with a full trust layer, with data masking, with the toxicity detection, if you're not implementing this trust layer, then there's decent risk that a lot of your employees are just starting to use the tools directly without using it through your organization's proven methods with data masking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's obviously against policy, but the reality is like these tools are getting really, really powerful, and it's becoming really useful. So here's Derek's just dropping stuff directly into ChatGPT.
Right. That's what I'm saying, right? I pulled this up to prove your point.
Time.
What's stopping sales reps from downloading this on a Mac?
They are all
having Salesforce open in another window and dropping in your corporate data. Nothing. And so the problem with that, I mean, so the reason they're doing that is because they don't have another. If the solution is right embedded,
powerful, it saves so much time. Here. So it's so hard to if there's a really powerful new tool on the market, it's almost impossible as an organization to just say, nah, we're not going to use it. Like your people are going to find a way to use the tools. So you almost have to start implementing a method to get the trust layers in place to let your team use the tool in a safe method, to keep them within policy.
Yeah. And again, this could be another whole conversation, just digging into this trust layer, looking at data masking, demasking, all that stuff.
I think this slide right here, this is huge to me. The method of using a model with a trust layer in place is a big deal.
Yeah, so it's to bring your own models too, by the way.
Yep. Well, even
But
even if you're using GPT, that's a managed model within the Salesforce space. So that's still different than me just dropping it into Chat GPT. Is that true, Derek? Am I understanding
yes,
that right?
yeah.
That's a
Well,
that's
because you're not getting, so dropping stuff
within
in is not
Salesforce.
masking it. It's not masking it. You're not protecting your data and all that good stuff. But yeah.
That too.
So the other thing I wanted to mention was, and it's not installed in this org, but there is a set, when you turn this on, there's a set of dashboards and reports that can give you feedback on like the quality and how much people are using it and,
Hmm.
all that stuff, right? And this is the audit and feedback piece. So if I go back to, where is it? Here, right? This is where you turn that on. So you turn back on the feedback loop, and then you can install the package here. And for whatever reason in this demo trial org that didn't install, but that's where you would do that, right? And so that, if you think about it, right, we kind of walk through this whole section in the
Mhm.
setup from Copilot Studio. There's analytics and whatnot, but the Copilots, here are the actions, the feedback, there's the setup, right? This is simply just how you turn that stuff on. Um, and then this brings you to the trust layer section. This brings you to the feedback section, and then prompt builder, right? Now, there's a whole bunch of other things that Salesforce is doing with AI in the platform. I mean, if you just look at this stuff, we're not going to get into that today. But again, my fear is that a lot of times you hear technical debt. There's so much feature debt out there, and what feature debt is folks that have access to some of this that aren't using it.
Yep.
We all have it, right? I know for a fact that we probably all have a feature in our car we've never used. I mean, I know I have a CD slot that I have never used, but what I'm talking about is like just, I have that lane assist that beeps when you go over the line. I mean, I never have turned it on. But I did the other day find a feature that I didn't know about that I've never used. I've had the car since 2015. It was auto hold. You push the button, and when you come to a stop, you can let off the brake and it will just hold you until you give gas. I'm like, I didn't know I even had that. There's so much of that going on in Salesforce. It's unfortunate. And that's why we're having these conversations to try to bring that to light so that everybody gets more ROI on this. I'm not going to have time to show this. Maybe I can show it real quick. So there's a ton of stuff that you can install that's leveraging some of this stuff, right? And so this is third party app exchange, and this is basically like a quick report creator that's based off of generative AI. So you can just like put a conversation, say what you want and it'll generate it. Some of that's built in already, but I just wanted to show that there's a lot of things you can add as well. Obviously, do your due diligence because third party. But if they're on App Exchange, they've gone through this, they've gone through a significant process to get there. Uh, so this is the document we were just looking at. This is an interesting read. This is talking about the media craze that you can make $10,000 million a second doing prompt engineering. Um, but it also talks about what I talked about the bias and how we can leverage these in a really interesting way. So I'll probably add a couple more that'll be available for download on the site. And then that is a wrap. So I mean, I feel like I sped through that because there's so much content here to talk about. But hopefully, because I feel like there's probably a lot of people out there that know about Copilot. They've seen it at the events. They know about Prompt Studio. They've seen it at the events, but maybe not seen it up close because they just haven't had the time or known about turning it on or kind of understood the concepts. Hopefully this kind of spurred some, creativity in your mind on turning some of these on or playing with them in a dev environment. And again, we're here to help. The way I like to say it is, I've got one mechanic that I always go to with my car because I trust him and he's ready to go. And XenTegra, let us be that, like, oh, I need something done for Salesforce. Let me call XenTegra. Let us be that for you, is my ask. And Josiah, got any closing remarks?
Derek, how do you feel like if somebody wants to go a little bit more in depth, just still playing in demo environments, but kind of wants to poke around and get a little deeper? How do you feel about doing some like one-on-one workshop sessions of that nature?
I would love it. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
just
just want
reach
to throw
out.
there.
Yeah,
Just
reach
reach out.
out.
We know this is weird stuff, and there's a lot of questions. So I mean, just get in touch with us. We'll poke through it with you, help answer any questions we can. A lot of it's just starting exploring though. So get in
Yep.
contact. We're here.
And with that, we will call it a wrap. Give you 10 minutes back. It'll be 11 and 11 our time. So I appreciate everybody's time. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, Josiah.
Thanks, Eric.